My name is William Joseph Cobble. I am the author of the ongoing Contending with Paul book series. Today I will be reading an excerpt from book one in that series, Contending with Paul, the hidden story behind the writing of Matthew, Mark, and Luke. Today's excerpt will come from chapter 2. The Gospel of Mark, written by a Gentile for Gentiles, reflects much of Paul's distinctive theological worldview. This is not surprising considering Paul's influence and impact upon Gentile Christianity. Paul was very likely a hero to this community as he is today to the modern Gentile church. It is clear that Mark was influenced by Pauline doctrine, but he may have been aware of Paul's missionary exploits as well. Though written decades prior to the Acts of the Apostles, Mark includes this statement by Jesus, which aligns very closely to Paul's adventures as narrated in the latter two-thirds of Acts. In this passage, Jesus warns his apostles of what lie ahead for believers as they take his message out into the world. Quote, "As for yourselves, beware, for they will hand you over to councils, and you will be beaten in synagogues, and you will stand before governors and kings because of me, as a testimony to them." Mark chapter 13, verse 9. Remarkably, though written around 70 AD, Mark may have been aware of members of the 12 apostles who were still living in his day, though it is doubtful from his portrayal of them that he held them in any esteem. Consistent with Mark's incorporation of Paul's theology into his gospel is the likelihood that he also took Paul's side in the conflicts of the previous Christian generation. Mark's demeaning characterization of the apostles may only reflect his own personal sentiments, or it may be representative of how the apostles were generally regarded by those in the Pauline churches. His gospel shows a similar animosity towards Jesus' family members. Mark is written in a way that indicates the gospel being composed long after the events it describes, as well as from a great geographical and cultural distance. The fact that Mark composes in Greek reveals that his gospel comes from a later era when Christianity has left Aramaic speaking Judea and migrated into the Greek speaking lands. Mark sometimes gets his Judean geography confused, chapter 7, verse 31, and feels the need to explain Jewish customs to his audience, chapter 7, verses 3 through 5. When Mark has Jesus speaking in his native Aramaic language, Mark knows to translate this for his readers. 541, 711, 734, 1436, 1534. Mark can also make errors when citing the Hebrew Bible, chapter 1, verse 2, chapter 2, verse 26, and chapter 10, verse 19. The Gospel of Matthew is generally thought to have been written at least a decade after Mark. Of the 662 verses in Mark, some 609, 92%, reappear in Matthew, though most have been reworked. This means that 49% of Matthew's gospel is made up of Markan material, even though he does not agree with Mark on many important matters. With both gospels side by side, the modern reader can essentially look over Matthew's shoulder as he incorporates Mark into his own gospel, overriding the first gospel, even as he uses the work as his literary foundation. Unlike Mark, whose intended audience is Gentile, Matthew writes for Torah observant Jewish Christians. Paul believed the Mosaic law was supplanted by the work of Jesus, and on this matter, Mark agrees. Matthew, contrarily, believes the law of Moses is eternal and obedience to the law is obedience to God. This divergence in beliefs sets Matthew at odds with Paul's theological legacy. Contending with Paul.